Welcome to Scoreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey. And unlike our Skate America recap, this one we were back on the couch for. So we were seeing this often not in real time. A lot of this we had to see a little bit after the fact. I think in general, there was a lot about this event that was a bit underwhelming.
Yeah, just a little bit. I would say in particular, the pairs and women's event.
Yeah, there were definitely some areas we were hoping for higher quality skates, and there were some struggles in here. There were also some places where I was a little frustrated with the Halifax crowd because I felt like they were pretty lukewarm in their responses for some pretty great skates. I'm going to throw a little side eye at them in a few places because there were some real gems in here. But there were places where it felt like if you were a Canadian skater, you were definitely going to get the home field reaction. And if you were anybody else, no matter how fantastic you were going to get a polite bit of applause. Especially after coming from the Skate America audience that was so supportive of everybody and really worked to kind of uplift the entire field. That felt like a distinct difference with the Canadian crowd. Generally speaking, a big fan of our Canadian neighbors to the north, but I didn't love it.
He's got some feelings, y'all.
I always have feelings. I'm
You
full
do.
of feelings.
You are full of feelings. This one in particular hit you the absolute wrong way. I could tell the entire competition. Anyway, well, let's start with the women's event because I think that's actually one place where that occurred.
Looking at the top here, with no surprise, your first place finish is Japan's Kaori Sakamoto. There's often this phrase that gets used a lot about figure skating, which is that you can't win a competition in the short program, but you can definitely lose it. I think that several of the different competitions over the last two events that we've watched have kind of proven that otherwise, where people have definitely won with the short program because it's carried them into the free skate. And that was definitely the case for Kaori Sakamoto here.
Her short program looked fantastic.
Yeah.
But the long program didn't look like Kaori at all. It's an interesting dilemma, too. You and I disagree slightly on the free skate because I like that she's trying to push into a new area with the Chicago program. I know you're not a fan.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
I can't say it's my favorite, but Kaori's always pushing her own envelope. Like she's trying new things. And this was another kind of stretch. So far this season, it's not working right now in terms of how she's skating it. She doesn't look comfortable. So either it needs to improve by NHK trophy or she needs to do some serious reconsideration of it, I think.
The short program here shines. It does everything that we expect from Kaori Sakamoto, which is just displays her power, her grace, her charm, just that unique combination of things that makes her Queen Kaori. However, like you said, I just really don't like Chicago. It's just not I like the city. I just don't like the musical. And I don't really think this material fits very well on her. I'm all for stretching your boundaries and trying to do something different, but I think the program here, as I think choreographed by
Marie-France Dupree.
Yeah, I think it's a misstep. I don't think that it plays to Kaori's strengths. Again, all for stretching, but not when it disadvantages the skater with it. And she botched a couple of jumps, which she does sometimes. I mean, Kaori falls down sometimes. Usually on the last jump of her skate is the biggest vulnerability in her long programs. But here, she often looked like she was a little behind the music. She didn't look like she was comfortable kind of communicating the tone of it. And at no point in it did she look like the three-time world champion that you would expect to see here. She seemed very dissatisfied with the skate for obvious reasons. I almost felt like when she got the scores and saw herself in first place, either she just did not like that number, which for her combined total was only 201.21, which is an extremely beatable number and not up to her usual standards. But I almost felt like Kaori didn't feel like she should have been in first. I didn't see any of her post interviews, so I don't know if that's true, but that's just kind of the way I interpreted it.
Well, I think part of it was also that her Japanese teammate had a enormous success in the free skate. Rino Matsuike was absolutely incredible and moved up from 10th place after the short to a crazy, incredible second place to take silver. And her skate was just magnificent, is probably putting it mildly. It was just one of those perfect moments. I think Kaori knew that. I mean, Japan is so team focused, and seeing your teammate perform so well in that free skate probably only made it feel more like I shouldn't be here.
Rino Matsuike had a fairly disastrous short program. Like you said, she landed in 10th, and that's where she should have been based on how that skate went. But her free skate is, I think, the best free skate we've seen of this season so far. It was gorgeous. However, it was not as complicated technically. You know, when you would see the interviews with Rino afterwards, she talked about how she had lowered the difficulty of her program so that she could move towards cleaner performances. And if she wants that to stay really competitive through the rest of the season, she'll probably need to get back to some of her triple combinations that are a little tougher. But when you look at skating skills, emotional performance, the cleanliness and beauty of a program, yeah, Rino absolutely demolished with that free skate. And here's where the crowd ticked me off, because they gave such a milquetoast, lukewarm reception to that spectacular program. That did not make me happy.
I was going to say about half of them did.
About half. Some people eventually stood up.
Yes, I'd say about half of the audience gave a standing ovation to that program. About half kind of tepidly applauded. You never know. I mean, we talked about this in the Skate America episode, like how it feels in the audience versus how it feels on TV.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, or maybe it's better to say I'm hoping, that the emotional impact of it wasn't as palpable in the building. But I do agree that it felt like an underwhelming response to an overwhelmingly great program.
Yeah, some of you told us in the comments on the last episode that watching it at home, we had talked about how in the venue it felt like Isabeau won. And then when you saw her slide into third, that it was kind of a shock. Home viewers said that it was very clear pretty much all along that Isabeau was not going to be in first, and that the real question was whether or not she would even be on the podium. So that could be a case here. I don't know. If you were there in that audience and you did stand up for her, I salute you. Otherwise, big mad, because I really, really loved it. And I saw a few people online say they're like, oh, Rino was robbed. She should have been in first. Guys, she was in 10th place. And she closed this out with a 192.16, which is a pretty awesome number for somebody who had been in 10th place going into the free skate. I think a silver here is a remarkable achievement, and I don't think Rino is going to be arguing that she got robbed. I understand watching Kaori's performance, which was inferior to Rino's here, absolutely. But it's a sport made of two different competitions combined into one, and this is a case where the short program definitely won it for Kaori Sakamoto.
It did. And to be fair, Rino did win the free skate, as well she should have. In third, this is where I think for me things get a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
And to be clear, this competition was extremely close from second down to fifth, I'd say.
Yeah.
Even past that, it's not too far away. But Hana Yoshida took the bronze here by 0.3 of a point over Kimi Rapond. And that difference feels weird. And I say that as a huge fan of Hana Yoshida. As she had two, I'd say, good performances here. I would not call them great. They were not her best. They were solid. But Kimi Rapond really lost a medal because of a time violation that seemed awfully odd, since a lot of people had more exaggerated, like hit that second past the ending of the music mark to get the 1 point deduction. Several people had a far more extreme case of that and did not get that deduction, while she did.
Yeah, that I found extremely frustrating, because we really started paying attention to it after that happened with Kimi, and a number of skaters across the disciplines missed that end post, in some cases by clearly more than a second, didn't get that call, and yet Kimi, who didn't feel like she went a second over, got the deduction. I think she's the only person who got that time deduction in the entire event, and that cost her a medal. And I don't feel good about that. I adore Hana, just like you said. I mean, she was my gold in my heart last season. She's a terrific skater. She has not yet seemed to really like her material. I feel like that big sunny energy that Hana brings, you're not seeing it as much, especially with her free skate. Like, I just think she still isn't entirely into it. And I think she looks a little nervous and dissatisfied with it whenever she's done skating it. But I'm never going to argue with having Hana Yoshida on a podium in general. And worth noting here, this is a Japan sweep. This is a 1-2-3 at Skate Canada, and they also took the top 2 spots with 2 other skaters at Skate America. So of the 6 women's Grand Prix medals awarded so far this season, 5 of them have been Japanese skaters.
Which just speaks to the incredible depth on the Japan team. It's amazing.
Yeah, an incredible field of women. And even though these numbers here are not huge and not all of these performances were top notch, it still speaks to the quality of their skating, of their skills, of everything that they bring here. So I'm not mad about a Japanese podium sweep by any means. As I said last season, I'm a fanboy for their whole federation, generally speaking. But I do think that after Kimi delivered a couple of nice, strong programs here, to get dinged out of the podium by a time violation that seemed highly suspect is not something I like seeing at all. I said last episode, Skate Canada tends to be the weirdest scoring of the Grand Prix events, and I've seen a lot of other people echo that online, so I know it's not only my sentiment. I thought here in general, it felt a little bit more even than it has in the last couple of seasons, but that is one point where I don't feel that way about it, and I don't like it.
I didn't feel good about it either. I did feel good about Medi Skizis, who was only about a point behind Kimi Rapond and had two of the best performances I've seen from her in a really long time. Like, she really lived up to the home field hype. It was really lovely to see, and obviously something I think she needed just as a boost. Yeah,
Maddie is a wildly inconsistent skater who is capable of brilliance, but often falls apart. And I often think skates better angry than in a centered place.
Kind of, yeah.
I've really liked her short program so far this season. I think that really suits her. I was surprised to see her do as well as she did in the free skate here, because earlier on, I didn't think that was serving her very well. But it seemed to come alive with her this time, and I did like that. I think more interestingly at this one is the overall performance, though, of the returning Alyssa Liu.
I was so excited to see Alyssa Liu, who came in second in the short program. Oh, can we just take a pause and appreciate Alyssa Liu's short program this year? It's so good.
It's wonderful.
And it suits her perfectly. Her free skate, I think, needs some more time and some more attention. But also, I think that the problems that kept her off the podium and dropping from second to sixth overall were things that are mostly related to conditioning. She is only coming back into competition. I think this is her second competition so far. She won the first one, which is amazing, with about the same score, though, like maybe a little bit higher, but not too much. So I really feel like this is a case of she just needs more experience under her skates. And the more she does, the more she competes, the better this score will get. It's just time.
Yeah, she talked about her conditioning afterwards and knowing that it isn't quite there for the free skate yet. She looked pretty gassed by the second half of that program. You could feel her trying to fight to stay up with the music and keep the rest of it together. And I think that the scoring was fair on her there.
Yeah.
The type of skater that she has evolved into, I think, is really exciting. When you look at the early versions of her to now, makes a very compelling case for her return on the ice. I'm very excited for it. It would have been nice if she could have sustained the momentum that she had after that short program, but it was still two very enjoyable skates.
I really appreciate Alyssa in her comeback saying that when she ended the last phase of her career, she wasn't happy. She wasn't feeling it. She wasn't present on the ice anymore. And that's why she left. Now, as she's returned, she's feeling all the joy again. She's excited about it. She's feeling that competitive fire. Seeing her joy out on the ice is just so refreshing. There was cute little backstage moments with her and Kaori Sakamoto that just, I don't know, made me feel all warm and fuzzy. I just think she's a great advocate and personality to have on this circuit. And so I can't wait to see more.
A lot of the rest of this field here, they don't need a huge breakdown. I mean, I'll note that Elise Lynn Gracie was relatively consistent with her Skate America performance, which seems like she peaked pretty early. Her Grand Prix season is done now, so my expectation is that she's going to go back into training and really get ready for nationals and maybe some other smaller programs and stuff, and hopefully they can rebuild towards where she was at early in the season. Kaya Ruda, for once, had a actually really strong short program and more of a mess of a long program, which is kind of the opposite of the way that Kaya usually skates. She's so charming, but these programs aren't all that spectacular. The big thing that I really want to look at here, though, is the bottom of this ranking, because we saw both of the Korean skaters, Seong-wi and Yelim Kim, fall to the bottom here. And particularly Yelim Kim had a we use the word disaster sometimes. I mean, this is like a Hindenburg disaster of a long program.
Oh, yeah.
It was heartbreaking.
It really was. It was Kevin Amos Europeans level. Before the competition, she had in an interview mentioned that she wasn't even sure she was going to return to competition, but she still felt that pull towards it. And I'm really wondering if this free skate was her indication that maybe she shouldn't. I hate saying it out loud because I love Yelam Kim. I know you.
She's one of my favorites, yes.
It's awful to say those types of things out loud, but watching her, it was just honestly like shocking.
Yeah. When you look at Seong Wee here, I mean, she was consistent with 11th in the short, 11th in the free. She said in interviews afterwards that she felt like she skated to the best of her ability, which, a few seasons ago, Seong Wee was fairly competitive. To watch Yelam Kim, who at one point felt like a real competitor for top of podiums.
She was.
And again, one of my favorite skaters. I just love her skating style and the way that she delivers on ice when she's on. These were deeply upsetting programs. And last season, we talked about how the Korean Federation had seemed to kind of close ranks around itself, kind of pulling a lot of their skaters home and changing their training. And it had really seemed to take a toll on a lot of the skaters. This season, we see a resurgent Junwon Cha, which is terrific. And we see Cheon Kim being just spectacular. But a lot of the other skaters are not faring well. And this is really distressing. So my hope is that these two skaters can turn it around, particularly for Yelam, because I just think she's a spectacular skater when she's on, but she hasn't looked good for 2 seasons now. And considering the suspensions that took out Youngyu and Haein Lee, the Korean Federation is a lot thinner in its talent right now. It's a time where they really need these two skaters to perform well, and that is not happening.
Well, I want to move on to happier topics. Let's move on to the dance competition. For the 5th time, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier took the title. They took it by almost 15 points. And I have to say, I loved their material this season. Last year, I know I was very iffy on it. Their short program is probably the best rhythm dance of the year so far.
Of everything that we've seen, yeah, absolutely. Their rhythm dance is terrific. It's so much fun. It absolutely capitalizes on all of the things that they do well.
Yes, so much camp.
So much personality. It so clearly conveys that Barbie and Ken kind of story that they're doing with it. The fact that they have different sets of outfits for it, which fits that thematic of Barbie and Ken so perfectly.
Yes, that might be my favorite part of the whole thing is finding that out. I'm like, not only is that the most Piper Gillis thing I've ever heard, but it is the most perfect Barbie thematic. My God, I love that.
Them being their own dress-up dolls for their rhythm dance is pretty brilliant. And yeah, of everything that we've seen, I think it is definitely the strongest. Their free skate, I think we're a little split on this.
We are.
And what I mean with that is, for me, that free skate is almost like, I'm going to make the comparison that it's like prog rock.
Okay.
So here's what I mean. Like prog rock, progressive rock is a type of music that is so characterized by virtuosic ability and is often less appealing to a really broad scope of casual people. But it's much more for the refined ear that knows why that's so hard and that's so good. Watching Piper and Paul in that free dance, it is a absolute execution of perfect skating skills. The footwork, all of the edges, everything that they do in that thing is an example of two athletes at the highest level of their form. It is spectacular from that level. As a viewer, and this will not be a popular opinion, probably, I definitely differ a lot from the norm when it comes to Piper and Paul. But when I watch the 2nd and 3rd place skaters, I find them far more entertaining in that free dance than Piper and Paul. However, I think their skating skills are incredible there. And also, shout out to Paul's red suit, which is totally on point. Looks amazing on him. I love that it is both dapper and also goes against gender norms by having that big cutout in the back of it.
Absolutely love it.
Which also has got to keep him well ventilated and cooled off, which is a definite bonus.
Extra bonus.
So everything about that is great.
Yes, I am on the other side of it because the word I kept using for their free dance is intrigued. The story they're telling pulls me in. I'm curious about it. I do agree with you that the two teams behind them were more my speed in terms of what I actually just enjoy watching as a fan. However, I could not just fall in love with this program because I feel like I'm watching a film. There's something so cinematic about it. As soon as I saw Paul, I'm like, is he the devil? Like, is that what we're talking about here? There's something so intriguing about it. So I'm very curious to see the evolution of this. And I think they look extremely strong this season.
And then no big surprise. We loved Marjorie LaJoy and Zachary Laga.
I'm obsessed with this team. I'm never going to apologize for that.
Yeah. They had a bobble in the rhythm dance. They had a fall. Yeah. And I think that will make some people side-eye their position in second place.
I'm one of those people.
I do feel a little weird about that as well. And we saw a similar thing happen with Chalk and Bates last week at Skate America, where they had a fall. Both of them fell in between elements, so it didn't remove a whole piece, which is something we saw for several other teams where they had falls or significant problems on major elements, and that had a huge impact on their score. But Lala's quality level, their drama, their storytelling is so great otherwise. I'm a little iffy on their whole Austin Powers shtick for the rhythm dance. I mean, I love the music because I've always loved the soundtrack to that movie, but as a overall thematic, it could be a little overly goofy. And I think they managed to kind of rein that in pretty well.
They did. And I saw Zach even say like he's more of a fan of the free dance as well. This is possibly my actual favorite ice dance team right now is LaJoie and Laga. But I do feel like this second place performance here with that fall, even though it was on a part of choreography, so it wasn't on what we saw in other teams. For example, Ian Somerville, who was also at this competition, fell on a twizzle and fell badly. That's going to take a bigger hit than what Zach's fall did. However, I think the reason I struggle here is that Evgenia Lopareva and Jeffrey Brosseau from France were right behind them, lost by about 5 points. I thought they deserved the silver. As we've said many times, we are not ice dance experts here. 99% of the time, I would come into almost any episode of this and be like, LaJoie and Laga should just win, period, all the time. But here, Genya and Jeffrey were just so on. Their free dance, I am obsessed with. It is so good. And I think it was the best I've seen them, just period.
I think that in watching the free dances here, I have a real toss-up in my head between my favorite being the Sound of Silence program from LaJoie and Laga, because I thought that was extraordinary. I think they embodied it so well. But Lopareva and Brosseau's free dance really, really took me. I love this team. I like that they're avant-garde. I like that they're quirky. Their perspective is just so different from so many of the other teams. And I appreciated that, unlike last season, the ISU commentator actually liked them this time because he was so cold towards them last season. And here he was like, oh, this is great. I love those programs. There's just a lot of small touches in it that just showcase a level of refinement, of care, of time spent to just make small moments really matter. Yeah, them being that far back, 5 points behind LaJoie and Laga, who also had a fall, I don't like it. I don't like it again.
No, and I mean, maybe that's the better way to put it is I think that margin should have been less.
Yeah.
And I do think that Lopareva and Brosseau should have been second in the rhythm dance. Even if LaJoie and Laga had taken it back with that free dance, I think I would have felt better about it. As much as I love both of these teams and I want them to succeed, just feel like it was just a little bit off in the judging.
Yeah, that's a place where it felt like they got the Canadian bonus. It always feels like the judges don't like to reward the quirkier teams. We see that with Laurent and Lagak sometimes where they can be brilliant, but they still just kind of can't get any higher up the podium. And I feel like Lopareva and Brosseau kind of take a similar kind of seat with that here.
I feel like the Finnish team also gets a little bit of that.
Oh, Tequila and Versluis?
Yes.
Yes, it does seem like they often take a hit with that. And another team that I think that routinely kind of gets underscored, and I felt that way here, was the fourth place finish of Natalie Toshlarova and Philip Toshler. I am an unabashed fanboy for this team. I love their skating. I love their programs. I think that they leveled their stuff up really impressively here. The rhythm dance is super cool. Were they as strong as the top three teams? No. And some of their connections and holds and lifts and stuff are just not quite as complicated as some of the other teams. But when they pull off big moments, they're extraordinary. I very much enjoy them. I would like to see them get bigger scores. I could tell they were pretty dissatisfied with what they got after the free skate, but I would really like to start seeing them on some podiums.
I think that they're moving towards it. This score for them felt, to me, correct. But I also thought it was correct that they moved ahead of Zingis and Kolesnik, who came in fifth. I have been incredibly impressed with Zinkas and Kolznick this season. I thought their rhythm dance looked phenomenal, but their free dance looked a little bit stiff. For all that Amelia is usually just so exuberant and free in her performance, it felt just a little reserved, and both of them just didn't quite look as fast and as at ease in the program as they had looked in the last time we saw this. So I think they were hoping for a little better in terms of the scores and the levels, but I do think that it ideally just puts them back in the how do we improve this and get it back to a point where it's going to be really competitive and really start moving them forward.
And then from there on out, I think you get a lot of teams that got hamstrung by some errors or just being still in those kind of second tier teams that have more levels of difficulty to add. I will note that Hana Lim and Ye Kwan here landing in 7th, it feels correct with where these programs are at right now. I was really hoping they'd be higher up the chain after being so good last season, but these programs just don't work for me. And they don't seem to excite the audience very much either. I thought they were a little stronger in the free dance, but for as spectacular as this team is, I don't think these programs showcase it very well. And I don't think Hana looks like she's really enjoying the rhythm dance.
Hana in the rhythm dance just sort of looks like she's going through the motions a little bit. She's way more invested in that Cruella program. I adore them, so I want nothing but the absolute best, and this feels like a little bit less than the best for them. Well, let's move on to pairs. I don't think it will shock anyone that Skate Canada was won by Canadian superstars Deanna Stellato-Dudek and Maxime Deschamps. I do think it's a little surprising that their free skate looked kind of as rough as it did, unfortunately.
Yeah, they struggled to kind of keep on their feet. Maxime had a fall in one of the sets of the side-by-sides, and then you could see that kind of seemed to affect Deanna's landings in a couple of other places as well. Just a little choppy, a little tight through a lot of that program in general. Their short program, though, looked really strong.
Oh, their short program was spectacular.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And I think these programs look good on them. I think they just have a little bit of cleaning up to do. But if Deanna and Max have shown us anything, is that they tend to peak later in the season anyway. My expectation is that they're going to get this stuff cleaned up, and by the next Grand Prix program we see them at, I think they'll be in really good shape.
I agree, and God knows I love these too, so that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, the big surprise here, though, is the second place team.
The second place team, nobody saw coming.
Yeah.
So Ganesh and Shigerev from Uzbekistan, coming out of nowhere, took 4th in the short program, 1st in the free skate, to take silver here. They were impressive as hell. And I felt better about myself listening to the commentator on the ISU network going, nobody saw this coming. I'm like, thank you. I was thinking, how did I not know this team was going to be this good? And then he's baffled as well. So it just, wow.
Yeah, I had no idea who these two were. They skated in the first group for the short program. And I think sometimes in a long day of skating, there can be that feeling of, oh, maybe this is where I take a bathroom break if there's a team that you don't have high expectations for.
It's embarrassing, but it's true.
Yeah. In this particular instance, I'm really glad that I stayed seated for that because they were really nice. It was impressive skating. They were enjoyable to watch. It's nice when you see a surprise team come out and do something interesting, but I did not expect them to show up the way they did in the free skate. If anything, I figured they would kind of drop back down, and instead they delivered really strong, well-refined performances. They're a very well-matched pair. They look good on the ice, extremely competent skating. For a pairs discipline that can be really uneven a lot of the time, to see a relatively unknown team come out and give such an impressive performance is actually really refreshing for this division.
Also showing up really well here, even though they had some problems in the long program, Anastasia Gulebova and Hector Giotopoulos Moore from Australia, taking Australia's first medal in the Grand Prix ever.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment for them. It wasn't perfect skates here from them, but I like this team. Their energy on ice is really interesting because Hector is both very strong, but also has kind of a playful air about him. You can see that he's not a guy who takes himself very seriously, and that playfulness shows up in his skating. Anastasia is more delicate and vulnerable, and that combination of the two, that energy could feel off, but I think it works really well between the two of them. I don't know that I would say that either of these skates is like remarkably memorable. But I think that it does set them up well for the rest of the season. By the end of last season, I think they were really starting to make a case for themselves. And I think if they peak at the right time, they could position themselves to be a real player.
The team I was sad to see fall off the podium, though, was Annika Hake and Robert Kunkel. I'm a fan of theirs. I think they're fun. They're the rock and roll pair. This competition, they just looked a little tight. I saw that Annika post that she had a bit of a cold, so she wasn't at full capacity. It was just not quite their day, but I don't think there was anything concerning about it. It just felt like they were just a little off.
Hake and Kunkel are so much fun. They bring a lot of personality to the ice, especially Annika. I mean, she is such a show. They weren't too far off the podium, only a couple of points. You could see that they were very disappointed not to make that conversion. But still a fourth place finish, especially in pairs, doesn't count you out of making that Grand Prix final. So, we're only 2 competitions in. They still have another opportunity. So we'll see what happens for them.
Let's wrap this up with the men's competition, which had a really deep field led by the expected winner, Ilya Malinin, who coming fresh off of Skate America. And I think he looked better here than he did there for sure.
Definitely. I mean, you see him come out here with a 301.82. Not surprising after really strong technical programs that are super exciting. He definitely wowed the crowd. That I'm Not a Vampire program, I think, keeps getting better.
Agreed.
He knows how to work the crowd with it. It really plays to his form of artistry. There's a lot of character work going on there. There's a lot of super fun elements, and he knows how to make an arena jump to its feet. And that was very much on display here. No big surprise that Ilya would take this. I think his back-to-back strategy, which was probably at least in part to stay in the time zone to make the transition from Skate America to Skate Canada a little easier. And then he gives himself a month and change to get ready for the Grand Prix final. He's already locked it, obviously, with 2 gold medals, so he's good to go. What was really exciting, not necessarily numerically, but for performance here, was a silver finish for Japan's Shun Sato.
His short program was amazing. I am so impressed with his jump ability, not just because of him being able to do the big quads, but just his form in the air is so textbook perfect. You can't see any space between his arms and his body. Like he's just like a bullet going up into the air. It's incredible. But I do think he's also been working on his showmanship and personality. Like he's not the show like an Ilya. He's not the drama like Junwon. He's just got to find what that special thing is that he has that no one else does. And I think he's starting to slowly chip away at it. His line is beautiful. He has so much talent. And I think that with Japan having such depth in the men's field, just like they do in the women's, it's really a challenge for him to make himself undeniable for the world team. Showing up for a silver medal here puts him in great position to do such things.
I think he was pretty obviously disappointed with the free skate. It didn't live up to what he wanted it to be. 261.16 is not a big number here. And it was
not his best number of the season either.
Right. Yeah. So as good as particularly that short program was, and just how much improvement he's shown this season and the growth he's shown working with Guillaume Cizeron as for his choreography, there's definitely some room for improvement. I think he could have had his PCS bumped up a little bit more here. I think that number is perhaps a little bit more conservative than I would like to see. But like you said, he doesn't have that power of personality on the ice. And I think that's always a bit of a detriment for him, especially when you're third place and not even a point behind you is somebody with all of the personality on ice, which is Junwon Cha.
I love Junwon Cha. I know this is no revelation. He is amazing, but these programs at this competition looked wonderful. He made mistakes. They were not perfect here, but I feel like he is doing what he needs to show the consistent step forward towards Worlds. I feel like he is in the slow build. Last season, it felt like it was just so uneven all over the place. This season, I feel like he is slowly and steadily improving these programs as he goes. Because I think this is the 3rd time we've seen him. And while his scores haven't necessarily always reflected it, you can see the refinement in that free skate especially. It really is, I think, my favorite of all the men's free skates this season. It's just beautiful. And his drama sells so perfectly through it. I'm hoping he stays on this consistent trajectory towards what ideally will have a higher technical value at Worlds so that he is a real player and contender there.
I was really pleased to see him cleanly land his quad toe, because that's been giving him some trouble. We talk about how Junhwa is like one of the ugliest fallers out there.
For all that he's so beautiful.
He's so beautiful until he falls, and then he's out of control and going into the boards so often. And that toe in particular often seems like the momentum just carries him on past his feet and just has him running into the sideboards. And here he seemed to have that under control in his free skate and looked a lot better. If there is a situation here that kind of bums me out a little bit, it is seeing Sota Yamamoto fall off the podium, because, here's a guy who was third in the short, third in the long, landed in fourth. It's the weird bit of scoring where you would think you would average out is not how it happens based on those scores. I really liked Sota's stuff here. I thought he looked strong. He still is a guy who needs to work on what he does with his arms. There's so much of his arms kind of hanging down at his sides when he's going around, when he needs to express more with them and have a little bit more character in his performances. But I like this different aspect of him that he's been showing off this season. He's more of kind of a rock and roll skater, and here he's doing things that are a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more quiet, a little bit more nuanced. And I think he's nicely living up to that. There's still room for growth. Clearly, he could have been a little closer to the podium here. I would have liked to have seen a little bit better scores for him as well. I felt like it was kind of low, but I think that, definitely Junhwa beat him here, and so did Shun. So it makes sense where he was at. I just like him as a skater, so I was hoping for something better.
In fifth, we saw Vladimir Litvintsev, and he's a sweet skater. He's a good skater. I think that especially his long program did not serve him very well. He kept the same one that he had last season with a new costume, but you could see his own disappointment in what had happened. And I like him. I think that he has the potential to get much, much better. So I'm hoping for more podiums for him in the future.
That short program was pretty sharp, though.
It was. I really liked that one. But two other people I do want to mention before we wrap this up is Gabriel Frangipani and Jason Brown, who both had disappointing efforts here. Jason especially, both of his programs had falls. He was having a lot of trouble with his triple axel. He scratched one out barely, but I think slightly under-rotated in the long program, but fell on the others. He looked unlike himself, is I guess what I will say.
I'm not in love with the free skate. And the reason why I'm not in love with it is that I feel like it doesn't go anywhere. It is very one note. His skating is miraculous, generally speaking, but musically, it is this very consistent, almost monotone kind of score. I tend to like free skates that have acts, like a movie. Like I want a 3-act structure. I want to feel like things change, that it leads somewhere. Over the course of 4.5 minutes of that free skate, especially when his skating isn't looking as good, it just seems to kind of get real mushy for me. Like it doesn't feel like it goes anywhere. It doesn't feel like it lands. And I think for the first time in years, I watched 2 Jason Brown programs and I felt bored. And I know that's going to make some people unhappy. And believe me, big Jason Brown fan, love the quality, recognize that he still does things that nobody else in the sport is doing. But those programs did not work here, and I just don't like that free skate.
I love his short program, like the modified Tarzan program by Roheen. I just think it was not his best performance of it here, but I agree that I'm a little concerned about that long program. We'll see how it evolves. I know he has a vision for it, and my goodness, I trust Jason, so I'm hoping that that vision comes to fruition, but we'll just have to wait and see. Well, let's go to our Gold in Our Heart segment. And let me ask you, who is gold in your heart?
I am wildly torn.
Really?
Yes. So there's a real obvious answer.
I was going to say.
The real obvious answer is Rino Matsuike.
That's what I expected you to say.
Because of everything that I saw was the thing that made me happiest. The thing I most enjoyed. Her free skate was phenomenal. Little 4'11" Rino out there delivering an outsized performance that was just mesmerizing and heartwarming should be it. But why I'm torn is because otherwise, I think my favorite thing was La River and Brasseau in the ice dance competition. They're just doing things that I find really exciting and really enjoyable. And because it's so different from everything else. So I'm really torn. But if I just follow my heart, it's Rino Matsuike.
My heart is Alyssa Liu. Having her back, seeing her again, and seeing this brighter, shinier, happier version of her on the ice, And knowing that this is just the beginning is just extremely exciting to me. Her short program, it just warmed my heart. So I love you, Alyssa Liu. Can't wait to see more.
So next week, the Grand Prix continues with the Grand Prix de France. You have some big names showing up at this one for the first time during the Grand Prix series. So we'll see Adam Shaum-Fa, Cheon Kim, Guinard and Fabry,
Amber Glenn. We're going to see Kazuki Tomono for the first time this season, which I'm excited for. Boyang Jin, first time this season.
Yeah.
Hassan Volodin. Every week is a fun one, but I'm looking forward to this just because, especially getting Amber and Adam Shaum-Fa. Like, I can't wait to see what they both bring to this.
Here's hoping that we get a little bit more of a high performance competition there. I'd like to see some of those numbers come up, and I'd like to see less menning out there on the ice from everybody.
From everyone, yes.
But I know that these are really high pressure situations, and this stuff is very challenging for all of these skaters. So I'm just hoping for everybody to do well and to enjoy themselves and to enjoy it as a viewer. I have to say, if I'm hyped for anybody in particular, it's especially Adam Shaum-Fa, because I haven't seen him yet this season. I know he's competed at one other small event, but he's absolutely one of my favorites from last season. So I'm hoping that he's healthy now, that he's recovered well from his injury and is ready to put on a show there. So
let's hope.
Should be interesting. So until then, let us know in the comments who was gold in your heart this week. How did you feel about the scoring? Did you think everything shook out the way that it should have? Then, we will talk to you after Grand Prix de France. So for Scoreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.